Hello everyone, amateur meteorologist. First and weather here. It is July 17th, 2020, and here is the GO-16 National Satellite View over the past couple of hours. And as you can see, we did have quite a few storms firing up east of the Mississippi River today, especially in central Virginia and southern North Carolina. We had a nice mesoscale convective system really develop, and we had quite a few nice thunderstorms actually develop in these areas right here. Brought some pretty heavy rain in localized locations. And in general, a large swath of general cloudiness over the lower mid-Atlantic, while the upper mid-Atlantic stayed relatively quiet today with clear skies and relatively tranquil conditions. Now, if we go to the western part of the country, you can see that there were a few thunderstorms in the western part of the nation as well, and while in the middle of the country, things remained relatively quiet. But if you do look a bit northward, in North Dakota and northwestern Minnesota, you can see quite a few storms fire up another big MCS with quite a bit of severe weather. And in fact, there's actually a moderate risk of severe weather for that locality tomorrow and I think today, excuse me. Yeah, so for today, the National Weather Service did actually issue a moderate risk for severe weather for those locations. As you can see, this is a very strong mesoscale convective system. And I think there's actually even a PDS for this entire area, just indicating how volatile the atmosphere was and conducive it was for thunderstorm development in that area. Now here's the NAM 3 kilometer, and this is for the eastern United States. So we're starting out 19Z Friday, July 17th. And as we take this through, we can see that tonight the NAM is actually showing maybe the possibility of a few storms on the eastern shore, but other than that, things should remain pretty quiet. Right here, you can see that basically that squall line that was originally formed in North Dakota as it moves southeastward, and actually contains most of its strength all the way till the wee hours and early morning hours of Saturday, and finally it diminishes as we go to daybreak Saturday morning, while the eastern part of the country remains relatively mild. Now, as we go through Sunday, we can see that we do have a few hit-and-miss pop-up showers in Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, with more general thunderstorms forming in the Midwest Sunday morning. And then if we go into Sunday afternoon, we can see that things do remain relatively quiet, but we do have a large cluster of thunderstorms indicated by the NAM forming basically along an axis over here. We delete that. Basically along an axis in these localities here. Now if we go further through time, we can see that those storms generally move eastward, but according to the NAM, weaken. So up until Monday, things do look relatively unsettled over basically areas east of the Mississippi and slightly west. You're going to have scattered thunderstorms, especially in the Ohio Valley region and Indiana and Kentucky, with the possibility of a pop-up shower thunderstorm in the Mid-Atlantic region. Now, if we look at the National Weather Service climate forecast, we can see that the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook is very warm for large portions of the country. And it looks like some of the hottest temperatures we've seen all year are going to take place east of the Mississippi in the next few days, with high temperatures in the mid to upper 90s and even a few triple digits possible, basically in the southeast, mid-Atlantic, and even the northeast and portions of the Midwest. And if we look at precip, things look relatively seasonal. The National Weather Service does think there's going to be a large pocket of below average precip here, with basically a ring of above average precip around it. And so what that indicates to me is we're going to be in a predominantly ridge-like pattern over the center of the country, with essentially storms training around it, providing rainfall to these areas right here. And that would also explain the heat that the National Weather Service is indicating in the northern part of the country, as the high pressure really brings those warm southwesterly winds from Mexico and really pumps that warm air into the northern part of the nation. Now, as we move on to the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, you can see, there we go, that heat basically stays in place. That ridging also, for the most part, does stay in place. Bring that up. Yeah, so the ridging does, for the most part, stay in place. So it really looks like 2 weeks or so of pretty much above average temperatures in the eastern and central part of the country, while notably you can see Alaska remains quite cool. And then if we go to the 3 to 4 experimental outlook, you can see that the National Weather Service just basically puts all of the country to see higher chances of above normal temperatures, with pockets of below average precipitation. Now, if we go to the Drought Monitor, you can see that large portions of the country are actually currently seeing drought. If you recall, a couple of weeks ago, Virginia was actually in the beginning stages and actually was in the D0 stage of abnormally dry conditions. That, however, has since ended as we saw a pretty big cluster of storms last week for a few days that dumped 1 to anywhere to 4 inches of rainfall in some localities. So that threat ended, but as you can see, west of the Mississippi, there are some significant concerns for abnormally dry conditions. You can see along the northwestern portion of California going into Washington State, or Oregon, excuse me. And then if we go all the way down to the Four Corners region, you can see basically all of southern Colorado is seeing some severe drought right now. And if we look at the seasonal and monthly outlook, you can see that there really is no optimism for any of these conditions improving. You can see that most areas are actually going to be in the brown shading, which indicates that drought will likely persist for the month. Seasonal outlook isn't much better either. Again, large areas of brown shading, which indicates that those drier conditions will persist. And so what that indicates to me is we're not really going to be seeing any cooler conditions, mostly ridging-like patterns. And that is what's been going on really or what's going to happen over the next 2 weeks or so as we see that big ridge basically take place in the center of the country and basically a big heat dome, not to as extreme of an extent as a heat dome, but really going to provide warmer than average conditions in the center of the country and basically allow for storms to train around it as you go through time. And if you look at the 1 month temperature outlook, you can see that really basically the same thing, above average conditions, temperatures in the central, western, and even northeastern portions of the country, with the only area seeing equal chances of below average or above average temperatures being the northwest. Now, if we switch to the Ensemble models on tropicaltidbits.com, this is the EPS, European Model Ensemble, and right now we're starting on 12Z Tuesday, July 14th, or I think I'm going a little farther back in time here. There we go. Let's go to 12Z Saturday. So you can see that the ensembles basically have some ridging in place over the eastern part of the nation, and nothing too big, just some above average temperatures for the eastern part of the country as we go into Saturday. And you can see that trend really continues as we go through Monday. And that's what's going to provide those really warm temperatures as we go into the day Sunday and Monday, which could be some of the hottest days of the year for many localities in the eastern part of the country. And as you can see, we do have actually the EPS indicating some sort of trough or some sort of air mass moving in that should trigger some thunderstorms basically along these areas here. And with that those pretty warm temperatures, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some pretty good storms firing up across the area on Monday as this system moves through. Now, if we go further through time, we can see that ridge essentially moves out, and we have a small little kink in the jet stream right here. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some general unsettledness and storminess in these areas for the next week or so. And then as we go further past that, we can see that that ridge then builds in even further, and we have essentially a ridge across the entire country, not essentially the entire country, but a large portion of the country under sinking heights. And we can see that ridge being centered right here, pumping warmer than average conditions, basically in these areas right here, with seasonally warm conditions in this part of the country. And then as we go even further through time, we can see that ridge basically just stays in place according to the European Ensemble. Let's see if the GFS Ensemble has agreement. As you can see, it does have some agreement. One thing you might want to notice is the GFS is a bit stronger on the trough on the eastern axis of that ridge. I don't know if I'm going to really buy that, especially because it is summer and this extreme sort of troughing is not really that common. So I'm going to go with the European solution. I do think we're going to see basically a prolonged period of relative ridging after July 20th, 22nd, or 21st, with that ridge basically being stuck in the center of the country with relatively dry conditions and storms training around it, which will basically impact the outer fringes of the Northeast and the western part of the northwestern part of the United States. All right, so that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys next time.